Electromagnetic energy is all around us and it is constantly striking objects. The energy is then reflected, absorbed, or transmitted from those objects back to a recording sensor, such as a camera. The energy that is reflected is what appears as in the picture. Most solid objects absorb or reflect incident electromagnetic energy and transmit none. Liquid water and atmospheric gases are the most common natural materials that transmit light energy as well as absorb and reflect it. In the visible spectrum, if an object reflects the color green and absorbs all other colors in the visible spectrum, we will record the green wavelength for that object in our sensor. In addition to energy being reflected from the visible portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, it is also simultaneously reflecting, absorbing, and transmitting electromagnetic energy outside the visible spectrum. We may or may not see the electromagnetic energy outside the visible spectrum based on which portion of the spectrum the sensor is calibrated to. Natural objects appear to be the color they most reflect. For example, green leaves absorb more red and blue light and reflect more green light. Our eyes sense the difference in reflectance properties across a range of wavelengths to distinguish among objects. While we perceive differences in the visible wavelengths, these differences also extend into other portions of the electromagnetic spectrum that we cannot perceive. For example, individual leaves of many plant species appear to be the same shade of green. However, some reflect much more energy in the infrared portion of the spectrum and thus appear to have a different color when viewed at infrared wavelengths. Energy transmittance through the atmosphere is most closely tied to the amount of water vapor in the air. Water vapor absorbs energy in several portions of the spectrum, and higher atmospheric water content results in lower transmittance or scattering. Carbon dioxide, other gases, particulates such as dust also contribute to atmospheric absorption, attenuating radiation portions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Most remote sensing systems are passive in that they use energy generated by the sun and reflected off the target objects. Aerial images and most satellite data are collected using passive systems. The images from these passive systems may be affected by atmospheric conditions in many ways. Active systems are an alternative for gathering remotely sensed data under cloudy or nighttime conditions. Active systems generate an energy signal and detect the energy returned. Differences in the quantity and direction of the return energy are used to identify the type and properties of features in an image. Radar is the most common active remote sensing system, though the use of LiDAR systems is increasing. Radar focuses a beam of energy through an antenna and then records the reflected energy. These signals are swept across the landscape and the returns are assembled to produce a radar image. Because a given radar system is typically restricted to one wavelength, radar images are usually monochromatic, or shades of gray. These images may be collected day or night, and most radar systems penetrate clouds because water vapor does not absorb the relatively long radar wavelengths. An image is a two-dimensional representation of objects in a real scene. Remote sensing images are representations of parts of the Earth's surface as seen from space. The images may be analog or digital. Aerial photographs are examples of analog images, while satellite images acquired using electronic sensors are examples of digital images. Digital aerial cameras are quickly replacing film cameras as the sensor of choice. One major positive for a digital aerial camera is that it eliminates converting the film into a digital image through scanning. Scanners can introduce error into the photo. Instead of using film, Digital aerial cameras use charge-coupled devices, more commonly known as CCDs, or a similar element depending on which technology is being used by the camera. The CCD is a rectangular array of pixels that respond to light and record the intensity of the range of the electromagnetic spectrum that it is calibrated to record. It is possible to split multiple CCDs across multiple lenses or use multiple CCDs with a single lens to simultaneously record different portions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Digital images will be portrayed as raster files in a GIS. The individual cell value of a raster file is known as a digital number, or DN, or pixel value. The digital number or pixel value can represent a wide variety of data. This includes category and class, magnitude, height, or spectral value. Categories could represent land cover classes like forest or developed areas. A magnitude might represent temperature or precipitation. Height or distance could represent surface elevation above sea level, or a digital elevation model. Spectral values are used in satellite imagery and aerial photography to represent light reflectance and color. For example, the pixel values in a digital photograph represent the amount of light that is reflected off a surface and enters the camera sensor. The intensity or amount of light for each color or wavelength at each pixel is recorded as a number. In black and white images, this is generally recorded as a value between the range of 0 and 255. Pixels with low values appear dark, while pixels with high values are brighter. This is the default display for all raster data. Color digital photos are made up of multiple bands or layers. You can think of image bands, also called channels or layers, as a collection of images taken simultaneously of the same place. Many sensors on Earth observing satellites measure the amount of electromagnetic radiation, EMR, that is reflected or emitted from the Earth's surface. These sensors, known as multispectral sensors, simultaneously measure data in multiple regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. The range of wavelengths measured by a sensor is known as a band and are commonly described by the name red or near infrared, for example, and the wavelength of the energy being recorded. Human vision is a system that is able to detect 3 wavelengths or spectral bands. Our brains combine this data detected by our eyes into a single color image. All of the colors that humans perceive can be created by mixing the 3 additive primary colors, red, green, and blue. This is also the basis of color imaging, including analog film and digital display screens. Color images are actually made up of 3 values, one each for the amount of red, green, and blue light that entered your camera for each pixel. This means a 3-band image is needed to display a color image. When you download Landsat 8 images, they come as a raster dataset with multiple bands. Band combinations are selected for a number of reasons, and it is helpful to understand the spectral reflectance profiles of features you are interested in studying. For example, in the near-infrared false color composite, healthy vegetation appears bright red as they reflect more near-infrared than green. Another combination uses the shortwave infrared, shown as red, the near-infrared green, and the green visible band, shown as blue. A false color composite of vegetation might appear bright green, bare ground appears reddish, and snow appears bright blue. Though there are many possible combinations of wavelength bands, this table is a list of some that are commonly used. The band combinations are listed by band number in order of red, green, and blue. A natural or true color composite is an image displaying a combination of the visible red, green, and blue bands to the corresponding red, green, and blue channels on the computer display. The resulting composite resembles what would be observed naturally by the human eye. Vegetation appears green, water is water dark is blue to black, and bare ground and impervious surfaces appear light gray and brown. Many people prefer true color composites as colors appear natural to our eyes, but often subtle differences in features are difficult to recognize. Natural color images can be low in contrast and somewhat hazy due to the scattering of blue light by the atmosphere. For color infrared, there's no blue, so it's not subject to atmospheric scattering of blue light. It can detect fake vegetation. It can show healthy vegetation which readily reflects infrared radiation and displays as red. Urban areas will appear blue. And then we know that conifers, which are a type of tree, appear dark red, and hardwood trees appear light red. Infrared reduces atmospheric effects, which is useful for high altitude images. It shows bodies of water well, and we can use this in agriculture, forestry, and water resources. The left image is shown in standard natural colors. The one on the right is color infrared. Healthy chlorophyll-rich green vegetation is depicted in reds and pinks in false color imagery. Note that the Sherman Field, which is Michigan Tech's football field, is artificial turf. It appears green to the naked eye, which in the standard color image on the left, but is nearly black on the color infrared image on the right. Infrared film was originally known as camouflage detection film due to the ability to resolve fake vegetation in this manner. Note that conifers have different leaf cell structure and contain less chlorophyll than deciduous vegetation, so along with differences in texture, conifers often appear coarser. Coniferous trees are usually darker on false color imagery because they reflect less energy in the near infrared bands. So a coniferous stand is highlighted in the two images above. So we can see the difference here. In the near infrared here, we can see that they show up differently than the surrounding vegetation. So we're able to pick out conifer trees in a group of deciduous trees. Okay. False color images are a representation of multispectral image produced using any bands other than visible red. Green and blue as the red, green and blue components of the display. False color composites allow us to visualize wavelengths that the human eye cannot see, like near infrared and beyond. Using bands such as near infrared highlights the spectral differences and often increases the interpretability of the data. There are many different false colored composites that can be used to highlight different features.